Hey, I'm back making another video. Hopefully this video goes up all the way and it doesn't pause like it did before. Had to make two videos of the same thing that I'm going to talk about before I get to what I was getting. I had to make two videos about what I'm going to talk about right now, and this is going to be my third video again, so let's get started with this video. This is my Wrestling Forgotten Gems number 6. Now my next Wrestling Forgotten Gems are going to be pretty interesting because I'm going to be talking about the TV title. I'm going to be talking about the US title when it was in WCW. I'm going to be talking about the ECW title, and then many other wrestlers and many other feuds. So just look out for that in the next installment of Wrestling Forgotten Gems. But yeah, let's get to this video. This Wrestling Forgotten Gems today is about DDP, Diamond Dallas Page, a guy who started in the wrestling business around his mid 30s, I believe, or somewhere in his 30s. He came around in the wrestling business around a time where most wrestlers who were in their 30s or something, most promoters really weren't bringing him in, or his late 30s. Most promoters were just looking at him and they were just saying, we're looking for young guys, and they were WWE and WCW and other wrestling organizations were just looking to the young guys, and they weren't looking to bring in a veteran and train him and all that. But he managed to prove all the doubters wrong, and he became one of the hottest things in wrestling towards the 90. He became the hottest thing in wrestling business, well, WCW, in the later part of the 90s. So he had some memorable feuds when he was in WCW. He feuded with Dave Sullivan, who was Kevin Sullivan's brother, I believe, storyline wise, or I believe that is his real brother, which was a dyslexic story. He was like dyslexic, and DDP was always picking on him and stuff like that. And then the Diamond Doll would get involved and show him, and then DDP would get all mad and he would take his rage out on him, and then they would have a bunch of arm wrestling matches and a bunch of really awful matches on pay-per-view. But yeah, it was just something that gave DDP something to do, and he was pretty much over as a heel when this feud started. He also went on to feud with Johnny B. Bad. That was a pretty good feud, as it put DDP on the map. It also put Johnny B. Bad or Mark Merrill on the map, and it was a really good feud, as the two were feuding over the TV title, I believe, with Mark Merrill beating DDP every time they got in the ring with each other. I believe DDP only beat him at least one time, I believe. Then we head into 96. He had some good feuds with Alex Wright, where they had some really good matches against each other. He went on to feud with he went on to feud with Eddie Guerrero over the Battle Bowl ring. That was a good, interesting feud. Then later, Chavo Guerrero would get involved in it when he was taking the place of Eddie Guerrero, or fighting for the family's honor. Of course, Chavo Guerrero got destroyed by DDP, but still very good matchup, and many people started noticing Chavo just for that match alone. He then moved on to his biggest feud to date, where it was the later part of 96 heading into 97, where many people in WCW thought he was part of the NWO, as the NWO were talking about him and offering him to join the NWO, and then Nick Patrick would always get involved in his matches and stuff like that, and it had me thinking that he might be a part of the NWO. But of course it didn't happen, as in an episode of Nitro in 97, I believe, the NWO called out DDP to announce him as the newest member. DDP hugged and shook Scott Hall's hand. Kevin Nash turned around, and then of course DDP brought him up to him, and then he put him in the diamond cutter. And then Kevin Nash didn't see that. He did see that when he turned around. He got clotheslined over the ring, and then of course many of the members of the NWO came out to try to attack DDP, ran into the crowd, and thus DDP's push would begin. Of course, Then he would also feud with the Macho Man Randy Savage, where that kind of elevated his stock, and many people started noticing him even more. Of course, DDP, I believe, beat him one time in that feud, and then if some of you don't remember, was the match that Macho Man had with La Parka, and DDP was disguised as La Parka, Diamond Cutter Macho Man, and he got his victory over Macho Man, his only victory over Macho Man Randy Savage, as Macho Man would just dominate him during this whole feud. But still, DDP did end up looking good after losing to Macho Man Randy Savage. He then went on to feud with the other member of the NWO, which was Curt Hennig. Those two had some really good matches. I believe they had a match at Hog Wild or Road Wild '97, which was a really good matchup, but it wasn't as good as their Starrcade match movie, where Curt Hennig put DDP over like big time. He was selling for him. He was just making him look good, like making him look like the next big star. And then of course he did sort of like what he did with Bret Hart. He just made DDP look good, and then in the end, DDP wound up winning the U.S. title, and that would be a belt DDP would hold on for a couple months. DDP went on to feud with Chris Benoit, which I explained in my other Wrestling Forgotten Gems. Well, it was in the Raven Chris Benoit feud. Chris Benoit and DDP had a couple good matches, awesome matches. Then after that, then Raven got involved, which led to the three-way dance at Uncensored 97. Uncensored 98, which was a really good matchup, which saw DDP win with the Diamond Cutter on top of the table, which I believe it collapsed. Then, of course, DDP went on to have matches with Raven, have feud with Raven, which was a really good feud with Raven being jealous. And then, of course, Raven getting his revenge and beating DDP for the U.S. title. And then the feud would end in a Bowery matchup. I believe it was at the Great American Bash, I believe, or I forgot what pay-per-view that was, but that feud would end in that pay-per-view. And then DDP was just doing his thing for that most part of '98. He went on to feud with Hogan, have a team with Karl Malone, and face Dennis Rodman and Hulk Hogan, which was not a very good matchup, but still Karl Malone tried, and it kind of got the audience taking notice more of WCW. Then he had another match, a tag team matchup, this time with Jay Leno against Hogan and I believe Eric Bischoff, which DDP got his revenge and he won that. And then of course DDP fought Goldberg in what was probably one of the best face versus face matchups, although there's an Austin and Rock face versus face matchup, but it was still a good matchup. Then he went on to become the WCW World Heavyweight Champion, and thus after that he continued to get pushed and become a real big main eventer. And then he will win the tag team titles a couple times, couple times with the Triad, and a couple times with Kevin Nash as his partner in the Millennium. And then of course after that his career pretty much was ended in WCW when WWE bought WCW, and then of course he became the stalker of the Undertaker's wife Sarah, and of course DDP got buried a bunch of times by the Undertaker, and he was really one of the members that should have looked good in the alliance angle, but instead he just looked like a jobber. And it was a shame what happened to him in that alliance storyline, but he kind of bounced back and went on to feud with Christian and then win the European title. But then after that he kind of just floundered, jobbed to Brock Lesnar and then many other guys, and after that career injuries kind of took its toll on his body. He did wrestle on TNA, a couple TNA matches, but that was pretty much it for DDP, as I believe he retired and he just he was fed up with the wrestling business, and that was it. But yeah, DDP was a good wrestler. Master the Diamond Cutter. He was the one that told Randy Orton that he can use the RKO, because most wrestlers tend to not like how other wrestlers let them use their finishing moves, but DDP was okay with it. But yeah, people tend to forget about him because of his shitty WWE run, but still, he was a good wrestler, and That's pretty much it. Thank you for watching. Rate, comment. I'm out.